Hello, everybody. My name is Mark Rosenblum. I'm the Deputy Director of the U.S. Immigration Policy Program here at the Migration Policy Institute, and I want to welcome you to our webinar on regional enforcement, a profile of migrants deported from the United States and Mexico to the Northern Triangle. We'll be joined today by two outstanding associates. Victoria Rettig is a policy analyst here at the Migration Policy Institute, and Rodrigo Dominguez is a graduate student at the University of Massachusetts, and he's been a consultant here at MPI the last 2 summers. Both of them are key members of our Regional Migration Study Group, which is MPI's program looking at migration among Central America, Mexico, and the United States. Let me start with a couple of housekeeping points. I want to remind you that the slides and the audio from today's webinar will be available at www.migrationpolicy.org/events. The report itself, Migrants Deported from the United States and Mexico to the Northern Triangle, a statistical and socioeconomic profile, is available at the bit.ly link that you see in front of you on your slide. If you have any technical problems accessing this webinar, please contact us at events@migrationpolicy.org, or you can call us at 202-266-1929. If you have problems hearing via the web, you can dial in using the call-in information that we sent you via email. And we will have question and answer session at the end of the webinar. There will not be voice Q&A, so please type any questions into the Q&A or into the chat box on the right side of your screen, and that'll come to us, or you can also email questions to events@migrationpolicy.org. So to get started, as everybody knows, the United States experienced a surge in arrivals of Central American children and families beginning in 2011-2012 and reaching a dramatic peak during the spring and summer of 2014. Most of you on this call also probably know that the numbers have declined almost as sharply in 2015 as they surged in 2014. Apprehensions of unaccompanied children at the U.S. southwest border are on pace to reach about 38,000 in fiscal year 2015, which is almost exactly the same number as were apprehended in 2013, bringing the recent history of this issue full circle over the last 2 years. This report places these trends in child and adult migration in a broader context by looking at regional enforcement patterns, including apprehensions and deportations from both the United States and from Mexico. This regional perspective makes a huge contribution to our understanding of the U.S. immigration system because U.S. immigration, and unauthorized migration in particular, is a distinctly regional phenomenon. Mexico and Central America together account for more than 1/3 of the U.S. foreign-born population, more than 70% of the unauthorized population, and more than 96% of Border Patrol apprehensions. While Mexicans alone have historically accounted for about 90% of the region's U.S. immigrants, Mexican inflows have dropped sharply since 2007, and Central American flows have increased exponentially in the last few years, so that Border Patrol apprehensions of Central Americans exceeded those of Mexicans in 2014, the first year that's ever been the case. In another sense in which migration is a regional phenomenon is that essentially 100% of Central Americans arriving at the U.S. border travel through Mexico to get there. Mexico has a long record of cooperating with the United States on immigration enforcement by combating unauthorized transit migration, but as Victoria and Rodrigo will explain in detail, Mexico's migration enforcement program has played an increasingly important role over the last years, and Mexico now accounts for the majority of the region's apprehensions and deportations to Central America, particularly when it comes to child migration. So bottom line, you can't begin to describe the current migration trends or to understand or evaluate immigration enforcement without adopting a region-wide perspective that accounts for Mexico's role in managing flows. So that's what this report does for you. It's going to tell you everything you need to know about these trends, including how they vary by country of origin, along with what we know about who is being deported to Central America. So with that, I will ask Rodrigo to begin giving you the details.
And as Mark said, today we will present the most important findings that we have in the report that we just released on MPI's website. So we will start by looking at the changing trends in enforcement patterns in the region. first looking at the trends of apprehensions of Central Americans in Mexico and the United States, and then looking at the trends in deportations of Central Americans from, again, both Mexico and the United States. Then we will present a detailed socioeconomic profile of the deported population, which includes the socioeconomic and demographic characteristics of deportees who are 15 years of age or older. It also includes a demographic profile of child deportees, and it includes a criminal background profile for adults and children deported by the United States. We will then end with a discussion of the main policy implications of the recent changes in regional enforcement patterns, and of course, we will have plenty of time for us to answer as many questions as possible from the audience. So first, we'll present our findings on the apprehensions of citizens from Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador, which together form what we usually know as the Northern Triangle of Central America. Our findings show that apprehension patterns are changing regionally in two main ways. First of all, apprehensions of Central Americans in the United States rose steadily between 2010 and 2014. In the figure, you can observe that, for example, in 2013, the United States apprehended 139,000 Central Americans. That number went up really sharply to 239,000 in 2014. In fact, if we went back to 2010, apprehensions of Central Americans in the United States grew fivefold between 2010 and 2014. This pattern, however, will change in 2015. The data available for 2015 suggests that this trend will change as we project that U.S. apprehensions of Central Americans will drop to about half the number observed in 2014. The second thing that we are expecting to change in 2015 is that up until 2014, the United States had apprehended many more Central Americans than Mexico. But this will change in 2015 when Mexico is going to apprehend the majority of the Central Americans apprehended in the region, as their apprehensions will increase by approximately 70% compared to 2014. And as I just mentioned, we are expecting U.S. apprehensions of Central Americans to decrease by around 50% this fiscal year. Mexico's increase in apprehensions is likely a result of the implementation of the Southern Border Program, among many other enforcement policies that they have implemented, but the Southern Border Program is the one that has attracted the most attention, and it was put in place partly as a response to the unaccompanied minor crisis that happened last year. With the Southern Border Program, Mexico tried to promote orderly migration along the border with Guatemala and Belize, and Mexico increased surveillance along traditional routes used by Central American migrants, including surveillance in La Bestia, which is the cargo trains that some migrants use to reach the U.S. So what these simultaneous changes in the trends tell us, the sudden drop in apprehensions of Central Americans and the sharp rise of apprehensions in Mexico, this suggests that Mexico is now apprehending some people that would have otherwise made it to the United States before. So this has displaced some apprehensions from the United States to Mexico. A second finding from the data available in 2015 is that migration flows from Honduras and El Salvador appear to be decreasing, while flows from Guatemala appear unchanged. So in the slide that you can see now, we show the trends in total apprehensions. That means the sum of the apprehensions done by migration authorities in Mexico and those apprehensions by migration authorities in the United States for each of the three countries of the Northern Triangle between 2010 and 2014, as well as our projections for 2015. The blue line shows you the trends for the apprehensions of Salvadorans. The green line shows the apprehensions of Hondurans, and the red line shows the apprehensions of Guatemalans. As you can see, the three lines show an upward trend from 2010 until 2014, which means that apprehensions of people from the three countries in both the U.S. and Mexico rose all the way until 2014. However, As you can also see in the chart, we are projecting that apprehensions of Hondurans and Salvadorans will decrease in 2015. What this data is telling us or shows is that if we use apprehensions as an approximation of flows, it appears that Honduran and Salvadoran migration have slowed down, while Guatemalan migration flows appear to be little changed. Now we're going to look at the apprehensions of children in both the United States and Mexico. And we find similar changing patterns in the apprehensions of minors as we do for the overall apprehensions. So in this slide, you can see the number of unaccompanied children apprehended in the United States and the number of accompanied and unaccompanied children apprehended in Mexico in 2013, 2014, and also 2015. So before I go into talking more about the chart, I want to note that due to the way that Mexico and the U.S. report data on apprehensions of children, the U.S. numbers showed in this graph include only unaccompanied children, while the Mexican apprehension numbers include both accompanied and unaccompanied children. But they still tell us a pretty clear story of what's happening in terms of enforcement. So the first point that stands out is the very sharp rise in child apprehensions in 2014. As many of you already know, and as Mark pointed out in the introduction, this sudden increase in the apprehensions of unaccompanied children in the U.S. is what caused President Obama to declare the crisis of unaccompanied children in the